Sam Carter has always believed that his waterfront property was more than just a place to dock a boat. It was a symbol of freedom and independence. A decorated military veteran turned city official with a lifelong passion for the sea, Sam inherited Carter Marina from his family. Nestled along a serene stretch of coast, his property features a modest dock, a lovingly maintained boathouse, and a cherished boat that has carried him on countless adventures. For Sam, that boat isn't merely a vessel, it's a part of his legacy, representing years of hard work, honor, and the spirit of exploration. Every sunrise, Sam can be found out on the water, feeling the cool mist and the freedom of the open sea. His dock is his sanctuary, a place where he reconnects with nature, reflects on the lessons of his military service, and enjoys the simple pleasures of life. But this idyllic retreat is increasingly threatened by the encroachment of suburban bureaucracy. Overseeing the community is Kerren, the self-appointed president of the local homeowners association, HOA, whose iron-fisted approach to community standards has become legendary. Dressed in impeccably tailored suits and armed with a clipboard, Kerren patrols the neighborhood like a modern-day regent, convinced that every property must conform to her vision of suburban perfection. To her, Sam's vibrant maritime lifestyle, and especially his beloved boat, are not expressions of freedom, but glaring violations of the uniform aesthetic she so doggedly enforces. The conflict ignited one fateful morning when Sam discovered that his prized boat was missing from its mooring. After frantic calls to his neighbors and a bitter sense of disbelief, he learned that Kerren had commandeered his boat for a quick ride, a pretext she claimed was meant to demonstrate community-approved recreational standards. In Kerren's mind, the boat was an unsightly distraction, and its unauthorized use was a clear violation of HOA regulations. Enraged by this brazen intrusion into his private life, Sam confronted Kerren at a community meeting later that day. "Kerren, how dare you take my boat without permission?" he demanded, his voice trembling with indignation. "That boat isn't just metal and wood, it's part of my history, my livelihood, and my freedom. I never consented to your meddling." With a self-satisfied smirk, Kerren replied coolly, "Sam, the rules apply to everyone. Your personal attachments don't exempt you from our community standards. Consider this a necessary measure to uphold the order and aesthetics we all deserve." Her words, delivered with the cold efficiency of a bureaucrat, left no room for compromise. That confrontation was the spark that ignited a battle between Sam's fiercely independent spirit and Kerren's relentless enforcement of arbitrary rules. As dusk settled over Carter Marina that evening, Sam stood on the empty dock, feeling the weight of betrayal and the burning resolve to reclaim what was rightfully his. He knew that if Kerren's overreach continued, it wouldn't just be his boat at stake, it would be his entire way of life. Determined to fight back against this tyranny, Sam resolved that he would not be bullied by Kerren or the HOA. His property, his freedom, and his legacy were worth every effort he could muster. And as the stars began to twinkle over the calm sea, Sam silently vowed that this battle for his boat would be only the first of many in his war against bureaucratic oppression. The very next morning, Sam awoke to find an official notice taped to his front door. The document, embossed with the HOA's crest and signed by Kerren, accused him of violating community recreational standards by displaying a boat that did not conform to the neighborhood's pristine aesthetic. The notice demanded that he immediately remove the boat or face a fine of $750. Every word was dripping with legalese and authoritarian authority, a clear message that Kerren was mobilizing the full force of the HOA against him. Sam's pulse raced as he read the notice. To him, his boat was a symbol of his heritage and the freedom he had fought so hard to secure. Determined not to be intimidated, he gathered copies of local zoning laws, maritime property rights, and historical documents that attested to his long-standing ownership and the traditional nature of his boating lifestyle. Confident that the fine was baseless, Sam drafted a formal complaint disputing the charge and challenging the HOA's overreach. As the morning mist began to clear, a sleek sedan pulled up along his driveway. Two uniformed inspectors, clipboards in hand, emerged and marched purposefully toward the marina. "Mr. Carter, One said in a monotone voice, "We're here on behalf of the HOA to verify that your property complies with our community standards." Sam met them at the door, his voice steady. "My boat has been part of this property for decades. I maintain it with the same care I've always given to every aspect of my home. I'm fully compliant with local laws." Despite his thorough explanation and the supporting documents he presented, the inspectors continued their measurements and note-taking, clearly under orders to find fault. Not long after, Kerren herself arrived on the scene. Dressed impeccably and exuding an air of self-importance, she surveyed Sam's property with a disdainful look. "Sam, you must understand that these rules are non-negotiable. If you don't remove your boat immediately, you'll incur further penalties. The rules apply to everyone, regardless of personal sentiment," she declared, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Her words stung, and as she turned to leave, Sam's resolve hardened. That evening, as he sat in his study reviewing legal texts and zoning ordinances, he realized that this wasn't just about a boat. It was about the fundamental right to manage one's own property without arbitrary interference. Determined to protect his legacy, Sam prepared to gather evidence and fight back against Kerren's oppressive tactics. In the days that followed, Kerren's actions grew increasingly aggressive. What began with a single fine soon evolved into a relentless campaign of intimidation. Sam found multiple violation notices plastered around the marina, each one citing a new infraction, from improper recreational display to unsanitary boat maintenance, all designed to portray his beloved vessel as a public nuisance. The language in these notices was harsh and designed to instill fear rather than promote order. Rumors started circulating among the neighbors that Kerren was using the HOA's power for personal vendettas. Several residents, who had long admired Sam's commitment to tradition and independence, confided that they too had received similar notices for minor infractions that had never been enforced before. One sympathetic board member discreetly hinted that fines were sometimes levied arbitrarily and that funds were being misappropriated to bolster Kerren's personal agenda. Realizing the severity of the situation, Sam took action. He installed hidden security cameras around the marina and his dock to capture every instance of intrusion and every violation notice that appeared. Over the next several days, he amassed damning footage. Inspectors arriving unannounced, measuring the boat's dimensions as if it were a piece of art, and even Kerren herself walking through the property with a smug look as she attached yet another notice. Every photograph, video clip, and anonymous tip was compiled into a comprehensive dossier that detailed the ongoing harassment. Sam's files painted a clear picture. Kerren's campaign was not about community standards. It was about control and intimidation. When the next HOA board meeting was announced, the tension in the community was palpable. Frustrated homeowners, many of whom had experienced similar overreach, gathered in the packed meeting hall. As Sam stepped up to the podium, he recounted the timeline of violations, from the initial fine to the avalanche of subsequent notices, and presented his evidence in a calm, methodical manner. The room fell silent as every piece of proof undermined Kerren's authority, and even some board members exchanged uneasy glances. By the end of the meeting, it was evident that the battle was no longer a personal dispute over a boat. It was a fight for the right to manage one's property without fear of arbitrary fines. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and the community's determination to stand up against Kerren's tyranny was stronger than ever. One cool, brisk morning, as Sam was checking the marina, he discovered an outrageous development. Kerren had taken her aggression a step further by commandeering part of his dock. In an attempt to improve community access, she had installed a makeshift hot tub on a section of his dock, claiming it would serve as a public amenity. To Sam, this was the ultimate violation. His dock, a vital part of his property and a key element of his family's legacy, was being tampered with and repurposed without his consent. Enraged by the audacity of Kerren's actions, Sam decided that he would not allow her to continue infringing on his property. Drawing on his resourcefulness, he hatched a bold plan. In his barn, Sam had recently upgraded his automated sprinkler system, an advanced installation meant to conserve water and nurture his crops. With a spark of defiance, He reprogrammed the system to serve as his counterattack. At the precise moment when Kerren and her team arrived to inspect the dock, Sam activated the sprinklers. A powerful cascade of water burst forth, drenching the hot tub and the surrounding area. The water mixed with the hot tub's contents, transforming the luxury feature into an unappealing, chaotic mess. Kerren's entourage, caught off guard by the sudden downpour, scrambled for cover while Kerren herself stood, soaked and visibly flustered, clutching her clipboard. The spectacle was instantaneous and dramatic. Neighbors, who had long grown weary of Kerren's intrusive tactics, cheered and recorded the moment on their phones. Videos of a waterlogged, sputtering Kerren quickly went viral, turning her latest stunt into a symbol of resistance against arbitrary authority. For Sam, the sprinkler strike was not merely an act of retaliation. It was a declaration that his property and his rights would never be subjugated by bureaucratic overreach. The incident galvanized the community, with more residents expressing their support for Sam and their frustration with the HOA's heavy-handed tactics. The image of Kerren, drenched and disoriented on his dock, became a rallying cry for those who believed in the right to live freely and independently. Desperate to reassert her dwindling authority, Kerren resorted to one final, extreme measure. That evening, still seething over the humiliation of the sprinkler incident and determined to salvage her reputation, she picked up the phone and called the local police. In her call, she falsely claimed that Sam's reckless property management had escalated into a public disturbance, endangering community safety. Her baseless allegations were designed to force law enforcement to intervene and restore her control over the marina. Within minutes, a police patrol arrived at Carter Marina. The officers, maintaining a professional detachment, met Sam calmly at his front door. Sam presented copies of permits, zoning documents, and a record of his previous communications with the HOA, evidence that his practices were entirely legal and that his property was managed according to established regulations. The officers carefully reviewed the evidence, complimented the efficiency of his automated systems, and ultimately dismissed Kerren's complaint as unfounded. Unwilling to accept defeat, Kerren then secretly hired a private investigator to dig up evidence of mismanagement on Sam's property. Late that night, while most of the community slept, the PI attempted to sneak onto the dock. However, Sam strategically placed security cameras captured every moment. The footage clearly showed the PI trespassing and triggering alarms, an unmistakable breach of property rights. At the next HOA meeting, with the community gathered and tensions high, Sam took the stage once more. With quiet resolve, he played the incriminating footage on a large screen. "This evidence," he declared, "proves that Kerren's actions have crossed the line from aggressive oversight to criminal trespass. Instead of protecting our community, she's been abusing her power for personal vendettas." The room fell into shocked silence, punctuated by murmurs of approval from the assembled residents. Kerren attempted to offer feeble excuses about maintaining community order, but the evidence was overwhelming. By the end of the meeting, it was clear Kerren's final, desperate move had backfired spectacularly. Under mounting pressure from local authorities and the unyielding scrutiny of the community, Kerren was issued a trespassing citation, a symbolic blow that further eroded her credibility and sealed her fate. In the wake of Kerren's public humiliation and her disastrous final move, the community's long-held frustration erupted into organized rebellion. An emergency town hall meeting was convened at the local community center, a stark, fluorescent-lit space that, on that day, became the battleground for the residents' revolt against arbitrary authority. Frustrated homeowners, tired of being bullied by Kerren's relentless fines and invasive inspections, gathered in large numbers, armed with copies of Sam's comprehensive dossier, photographs, video recordings, and first-hand testimonies documenting every instance of her abuse. One by one, residents recounted their experiences of being harassed for minor infractions and extolled the importance of preserving their right to manage their own properties. The collective anger in the room was palpable, a resounding chorus demanding that enough was enough. After hours of impassioned debate, the community voted unanimously to dissolve the current HOA board and remove Kerren from her position as president. The decision was swift and decisive, a clear rejection of the oppressive regime that had long stifled their individuality. Local media quickly picked up the story, heralding it as the fall of the HOA tyrant, while city officials launched an independent investigation into the board's financial practices. It soon emerged that funds had been misappropriated to support Kerren's personal vendettas, and countless fines had been levied solely to intimidate those who dared to live on their own terms. For Sam, the collapse of the HOA was a moment of quiet vindication. Sitting on his porch one crisp morning, he sipped his coffee as the sun rose over his reclaimed property, a property now free from the oppressive dictates of Kerren's regime. Across the neighborhood, the dark shadow of bureaucratic tyranny had lifted, replaced by a vibrant spirit of unity and self-determination. Following the community's decisive vote and the dramatic collapse of the corrupt HOA board, the full weight of the law was unleashed. City inspectors and independent auditors conducted a meticulous review of the board's financial records and enforcement practices. Their investigation uncovered a tangled web of misappropriated funds and baseless fines imposed solely to serve Kerren's personal agenda. Money earmarked for community improvements had been diverted, and fines were levied with no factual basis. Armed with overwhelming evidence, a coalition of aggrieved homeowners, led by Sam, filed a class action lawsuit against the former board. In a series of public hearings, Sam presented his meticulously compiled dossier, video footage of intrusive inspections, photographs of absurd violation notices, and internal communications exposing the systematic abuse of power. The courtroom became a stage for the community's collective voice, and the judge's verdict was swift and unequivocal. Heavy fines were imposed on board members. Several individuals faced criminal charges for fraud and mismanagement, and all misappropriated funds were ordered to be redirected toward community development projects. Additionally, the settlement mandated that a new, democratically elected board be established to govern transparently in the future. Local headlines soon blared "Fall of the HOA Tyrants," and the case became a beacon of hope for communities resisting arbitrary authority. For Sam and his neighbors, the legal victory was not merely about financial restitution. It was a powerful reclamation of their autonomy and a clear declaration that no one is above the law. With the legal verdict and public humiliation now firmly in place, Kerren's personal world began to crumble rapidly. Once the iron-fisted enforcer of the HOA's draconian rules, she was now exposed as a petty, overreaching bully whose actions had brought disgrace not only to herself, but to the entire board. Forced to resign from her position as president, Kerren found herself isolated. Former allies and board members distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with her tarnished legacy. Her stately home, a symbol of the suburban status she once so proudly maintained, was swiftly put on the market amid swirling rumors of financial ruin, and whispers spread that her longtime partner had finally abandoned her, unable to withstand the relentless pressure and public disgrace. Her attempts to secure even a modest role in property management were met with derision. At local job fairs, potential employers exchanged skeptical glances whenever her name was mentioned, and the community's scorn was palpable. In one particularly humiliating moment at a city hall meeting, Kerren desperately tried to justify her actions as necessary measures for maintaining community order, only to be met with laughter and pointed remarks from the residents. Kerren's personal downfall became a living cautionary tale, a stark reminder that no one is immune from accountability when power is abused. For Sam, witnessing Kerren's collapse was a quiet, deeply satisfying moment of poetic justice. There was no need for overt celebration. Every public misstep, every financial setback, and every whispered comment reinforced the truth that tyranny eventually crumbles under the united spirit of a community determined to live free. Kerren's personal ruin became a symbol of the inevitable downfall of unchecked authority. As autumn deepened into a crisp, clear evening, the community of Carter Acres embraced a new era of freedom and unity. The dark days of arbitrary fines, invasive inspections, and oppressive HOA mandates were now relegated to cautionary tales, an ugly chapter that had finally been closed. Sam sat on his porch, the warm glow of the setting sun reflecting off his reclaimed property, a quiet smile on his face as he recalled the long, arduous battle. At a celebratory block party held in the community park, neighbors gathered to toast their hard-won victory over bureaucratic tyranny. Laughter filled the air as residents shared humorous anecdotes about the absurdities they had endured, especially the day when Kerren, attempting her usual inspection of his boat for a quick ride, was forced to relinquish it to the Coast Guard. In one particularly playful moment, a longtime friend produced a comically oversized HOA violation notice, accusing Sam of excessive maritime vigilance and unauthorized Coast Guard coordination. With a wry grin, Sam accepted the faux citation and quipped, "I guess they really did try." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, a final, resounding mic drop on an era of oppression. As twilight deepened and the party wound down, families and friends lingered, discussing plans for a future built on transparency, innovation, and mutual respect. The oppressive rules that once loomed over Carter Acres were replaced by a community-led governance system that celebrated individuality and safeguarded personal rights. Sitting quietly on his porch as the last light faded, Sam reflected on the journey. His boat, stolen for a quick ride by an overzealous, tyrannical Kerren, had been reclaimed and safely turned over to the Coast Guard, ensuring that his property and his rights were fully restored. The legacy of HOA Kerren's petty reign had been consigned to a cautionary tale, and the united spirit of the community shone brighter than ever. Fade to black.